his tone with the Fed, having tariffs on China? Has Donald Trump's great plan failed? After a series of heavy tariffs aimed at pressuring China and teaching the Fed a lesson, President Trump is now being forced to step back. From being resolute to compromising, is the strategy he confidently built falling apart before our eyes? This big question not only raises surprise, but also casts doubt on his ability to maintain power in the future. It seemed like Donald Trump would celebrate a victory when he imposed high tariffs on Chinese goods, hoping it would make China kneel and accept America's terms. But no one expected his plan to face so many obstacles. And now, his strategy is beginning to show clear cracks. At first, Trump poured all his energy into imposing extremely high tariffs on Chinese products, aiming not only to weaken China's economy, but also to make America the winner in the trade war. However, after battling with escalating tariff numbers, Trump started to change his tactics. The decision to reduce tariffs, along with a surprising shift in his stance on Fed Chairman Jerome Powell, left many people, in fact, some began to ask, has Trump realized that his plan is failing? The trade tension between the US and China reached a boiling point when Trump decided to impose sky-high tariffs on Chinese goods. Some strategic items were hit with tariffs as high as 145%, with certain goods even reaching an astonishing 245%. A move that felt like a direct hit to China's economy. But China wasn't going down without a fight. In retaliation, they slapped tariffs of up to 125% on American goods, turning the trade war into an all-out battle between two economic giants. These numbers left people wondering, can tariffs really force China to back down? Or is this just an endless war of attrition? After a while, Trump began to realize that his hardline approach wasn't yielding the expected results. And then, a significant shift occurred. The Trump administration is now considering lowering tariffs on certain key items to around 65%, nearly halving the initial 145% rate. This unexpected move feels like a tactical retreat, but it also signals that Trump may be looking for a way out of the tariff quagmire. But that's not all. The Trump administration is also contemplating a tiered tariff system. Non-strategic items could see tariffs as low as 35%, while goods tied to national security would continue to face high tariffs. This is Trump's way of trying to ease tensions while saving face, showing a clear shift in his approach. Despite the pain from the trade war, China's economy has not been knocked down. On the contrary, China is showing remarkable resilience. A prime example is the recent data from April 21st, which revealed that China's ports handled 6.3 million containers, a 10% increase compared to the same period last year. This isn't just a sign that China's economy is holding strong. It also highlights the country's impressive ability to bounce back from hardship. China hasn't just kept its exports flowing to the US, it's also cleverly expanded into other markets like ASEAN and Europe. No longer solely dependent on the US, China is diversifying its trade relationships, allowing it to continue growing even amid a fierce trade war. This strategic shift has allowed China to not only survive, but thrive in tough conditions. Although Trump hoped that tariffs would make China fall, the reality has been quite different. China has limited imports of certain American goods, but the US still craves Chinese products. Major US ports, like Los Angeles, continue to import millions of containers from China each week, proving that demand for Chinese goods remains strong. The US still heavily relies on China's affordable and diverse products, even as trade tensions escalate. But it's not just China feeling the heat. The tariffs have disrupted supply chains across Asia, which has had a significant impact on industries and consumers in the US. American businesses are starting to feel the price of the trade war. Higher import costs are pushing up the prices of goods, creating hardships for consumers. This shows that the trade war isn't just affecting China, it's also coming back to bite the US economy. In the past, Trump didn't hold back in criticizing Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell for not acting quickly enough to cut interest rates. He blasted Powell harshly and even threatened to fire him if things didn't change. Trump, hoping to give the US economy a boost, firmly believed that lowering interest rates was the key to unleashing greater economic growth. However, in a surprising turn of events, by the end of April 2025, Trump made an unexpected announcement. He declared that he had no intention of firing Powell, which left many people in shock. This marked a clear shift in his stance on monetary policy. The change in tone suggests that Trump may be realizing that not every aspect of the economy can be controlled, and it might be time for him to cool down his strategy to avoid escalating tensions further. Right after Trump's unexpected statement about the Fed, the U.S. stock market reacted positively. Major stock indices saw significant gains, with the Dow Jones climbing 1,100 points or 2.84%, S&P 500 rising by 3%, and NASDAQ soaring by 3.85%. This surge indicated that investors interpreted Trump's shift as a positive sign, sparking hope for a return to stability in the economy. Investors began to feel more optimistic, noticing signs of de-escalation both in the trade war and monetary policy. They believed that with less tension in both the trade conflict and interest rate policies, investor confidence would be restored, potentially helping the U.S. economy grow stronger in the future. This cooling-off signal was a welcome development for investors, bringing renewed hope for stability and profitable returns in the market. Trump's initial goal was to cripple China's economy by imposing high tariffs and strong economic measures. But the results have been far from what he expected. His tariffs didn't manage to topple China's economy. In fact, China not only remained strong, but also made strategic moves to build a more sustainable future. Rather than backing down, China took bold steps, signing trade agreements with other countries like ASEAN and Europe. This didn't just allow China to maintain its export strength, but also helped diversify its markets. They also increased foreign currency reserves, which strengthened the economy and provided resilience against the pressure from the US. As a result, Trump's strategy, which aimed to weaken China, turned into an endless battle as China maintained its position of power and expanded its global influence. Trump's tariff policies, although intended to benefit the US, ended up creating significant negative effects on the US economy. One of the biggest issues was the rising cost of goods. High tariffs on imports caused consumer prices in the US to skyrocket. American businesses had to cope with higher import costs, which not only raised the price of products but also impacted profits, especially in industries dependent on imported materials. On top of that, American public support for Trump sharply declined. His approval rating dropped to its lowest point since his re-election, falling to just 43% by April 2025. This indicates that the public was not on board with his trade policies, particularly as they felt the direct negative impacts through rising living costs and a decrease in purchasing power. With these challenges, Trump's tariff strategy not only harmed the U.S. economy but also eroded his political support, putting him in a difficult position to maintain both his policies and his political credibility. A clear consequence of Trump's tariff strategy has been an imbalance in his policies. Initially, he was confident in his ability to control both China and the U.S. economy. But now, not only is he facing strong opposition from China, but he also had to soften his stance with the Fed and adjust his tariff strategy. These changes didn't just weaken his initial strategy, but also showed that he was losing control of the situation. When Trump had to take a step back on his tariff policies and announced that he had no intention of firing Fed Chair Jerome Powell, his credibility took a hit with both investors and the public. Furthermore, by changing the tariff strategy to lower rates and introducing a more flexible tax system, he had to admit that his original plan wasn't achieving its goals and might be falling apart. These adjustments raised doubts about Trump's ability to manage his policies and left people questioning whether he could maintain control in the global trade and economic battles moving forward. Under Donald Trump's administration, the trade war with China and his monetary policy stance toward the Federal Reserve, FED, were once two central pillars of his America First economic strategy. However, the story is now entering a surprising new chapter. Recently, Trump has startled many by unexpectedly shifting his tone. From a previously hardline stance, he now appears to be softening and looking for ways to ease the tensions he helped create. This is a clear sign that his tariff strategy and broader economic policies are no longer as effective as they once were, and may even be on the verge of failure. In a recent development, Trump has lowered tariffs on Chinese goods, a move that has surprised observers. At the same time, instead of continuing to criticize the Fed for not cutting interest rates as aggressively as he demanded, he now seems more willing to cooperate and adopt a more conciliatory approach. This shift raises a major question. Can he continue to maintain his current strategy, or will he be forced to backtrack to save the economic situation that is increasingly under pressure? The trade war with China does not only directly impact the U.S. economy, from financial markets and supply chains to consumer sentiment, but also forces Trump to make difficult decisions regarding monetary policy. The relationship between the White House and the Fed, already tense, has grown more complex as Trump tries to assert control while also facing undeniable signs of market instability. All these moves will define the next steps in Trump's economic strategy. Voters, businesses, and analysts alike are closely watching every decision he makes, waiting to see whether Trump can continue to stand firm under pressure or whether he will need to fully adjust his approach to avoid an economic crisis during his term or upcoming re-election campaign.